right, in the wake of this tragic school shooting in Florida, President Trump is showing some very strong leadership. He's now trying to find ways to keep America's schools safe, our kids safe. And during another White House listening session earlier today, the president, he offered up ideas and solutions. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
We have to harden our schools, not soften them up. A gun-free zone to a killer or somebody that wants to be a killer, that's like going in for the ice cream. That's like, here I am, take me. We have to get smart on gun-free zones. When they see it says this is a gun-free zone, that means that nobody has a gun except them. Nobody's going to be shooting bullets in the other direction. And they see that as such a beautiful target. They live for gun-free zones. I think a concealed permit for having teachers and letting people know that there are people in the building with guns. You won't have, in my opinion, you won't have these shootings because these people are cowards. They're not going to walk into a school if 20% of the teachers have guns. It may be 10%, or maybe 40%. And what I'd recommend doing is the people that do carry, we give them a bonus. We give them a little bit of a bonus. But the NRA is ready to do things. And, you know, people like to blame them, and they do have power and all of that, but they want to do. They actually came up with certain of the rules and regulations that we have now, but we're going to have to toughen. I told them, I said, we're going to have to toughen them up. We really do have to have offensive measures also. I know people don't like talking about it, but we need offensive as well as defensive. We have to be totally defensive, but if we don't have offensive measures within these schools, you're just kidding yourselves, folks.
All right, you have to give the president a lot of credit because instead of engaging in the same old tired back and forth, repeating the same talking points that politicians and media use after these tragedies, he's actually trying to come up with solutions, solving the problem. Now, here's the bottom line. We have a choice in all of this. Do we keep having the exact same political debate that we've had ongoing since Columbine that's not going to change anybody's minds? Or do we actually fix the problem? Do we want to protect our children? Now, remember, after 9/11, well, we fixed the problem of aircraft security, and I am a very strong supporter of the Second Amendment, and I'm sure people in this room are as well tonight. Predictably, the left and the liberal media that are talking about getting rid of the Second Amendment or talking about confiscating guns like Australia, for a minute, let's take politics out of all of this. Let's just focus on the issue. How do we keep our kids safe in school? Now, the president's saying he wants solutions, and that's why he sat down with students and parents and teachers and governors and state and local officials. Now, he talked and he listened. And by the way, he wants to have a positive impact. This is a simple truth. The left and the media can talk all they want about banning certain types of weapons used by these evil maniacs, but the thing is, you could never stop the evil that exists in some people's hearts. And if you take away and you ban one weapon, these killers, those with evil intent, will use something else. We have already seen this happen. Let's go back to the Virginia Tech shooting, the deadliest shooting in the history of this country. And in that case, the shooter used pistols. And what the left, the media cannot seem to comprehend or don't want to comprehend is that evil exists in this world. There are murderers, there are rapists, there are child molesters. There is evil. And by the way, if they don't use a rifle in the case of these school shootings, then it's going to end up being a handgun the next time. And then after that, if it's not a handgun, it's going to be another type of weapon or tool. Remember the Boston bombers? They used explosives that were made from everyday products that are readily available. Other terrorists have used trucks, vans, and cars. Others have used knives. Are we going to ban everything? And as much as the left and the media want to think that the government can fully stop these killers with regulations and laws, they cannot. Because people that have this evil, they will always find a way to cause pain and suffering and inflict maximum carnage. The only thing that comes with banning weapons is that you will infringe on the rights of constitutional, law-abiding American citizens that have the right to protect themselves and their families. What's missing are real solutions to protect these innocent kids. You know, speakers at the White House in this listening session, they brought up a lot of great ideas and solutions that we've been discussing on this show. Now, in the case of the Florida school shooting, there were warning signs all over the place about Nikolas Cruz. We knew that he was mentally ill. We knew he was unstable. We knew he was capable of doing something. The students all seemed to know it, and the same goes for the teachers. There were reports that police were actually called to Cruz's home 39 times over a 7-year period. That's a pretty good indicator. Cruz got into trouble at school. He threatened students. He wasn't allowed to carry a backpack at the school, and he was eventually expelled from the school. The Miami Herald reports that school officials actually sent out an email warning teachers about Nikolas Cruz. And then, of course, you have his social media footprint. He had pictures with guns and knives and all kinds of disturbing photos. Then, of course, the FBI. They were called and warned specifically twice about Nikolas Cruz, and they did not follow up. Now, in other words, every bit of evidence to indicate that this was going to happen was right there in front of us. People saw something, said something, and nothing happened. They did nothing. And we're also learning 2 new disturbing pieces of information tonight. And according to that report, the school security cameras were on a nearly half-hour delay, which slowed down law enforcement and their ability to capture Nikolas Cruz. And the Broward County Sheriff is saying that the armed security officer on the school's campus didn't even enter the building when the shooting was taking place. And instead, the officer took a defensive position outside of the school. This is why we need solutions. We need ideas. We need to fix the problem. We need to protect our kids. And here's the thing. We already know what works. And there are things that we use every day in office buildings and airports and courthouses and other government buildings and other facilities. The key, if you want to solve the problem, is security, and it's not really that hard. Every school in this country needs to have a comprehensive threat assessment that can be done by retired or former police or retired former military, special ops. These schools are soft targets. We need to harden the perimeters around these schools. And for those of you worried about the cost, really? Are we going to really be cheap when it comes to defending our kids? Because I also guarantee you these former officers and veterans, they would line up and volunteer to help their community to keep our kids safe. Now, these assessments need to include ways to secure the perimeter, control every point of entry, and from there, if these experts determine that it's needed, you need to put an ID system in place, 0 exceptions. They need to know everybody that goes into that school. I work in 2 office buildings in New York, one for radio, one for TV. If you don't have a work ID, you are not allowed entry. Visitors are vetted through a security system, and you must show your ID. And then you're usually checked in case you have any metal objects going in. And from there, on a case-by-case basis, if some schools need it, they should have metal detectors and other security measures. And finally, you have to have an armed security presence at every school in America, and you can hire, right, retired veterans and police officers. Schools can no longer be soft targets. You have to have people there who can fight back and challenge and confront any potential threat. And when you think about the statistic that was brought up at the White House listening session yesterday, the average shooting, school shooting, lasts only 3 minutes. It takes police on average 6 to 8 minutes to respond, which, by the way, is incredibly fast. But why not have somebody already on the scene that is armed, that is trained, and ready to respond and save lives at a moment's notice? We take potential security threats against politicians. Look at the security at the Oscars for these prima donna celebrities at the red carpet. They have every ounce of security you could ever dream of. Why wouldn't we do the same thing for our children? And in addition, right? And in addition to all of that, we also need a much better way to identify and help these kids that are obviously in trouble. There has to be a system put in place to spot kids that we think are disturbed. We need to help them, get them the help that they need. And we have to put a focus on social media, whether it's someone physically monitoring it or easier, somebody reports what's going on in the case of this particular kid, Nikolas Cruz. Now, also on this stage earlier today, the NRA CEO, Executive Vice President Wayne LaPierre, he was here at CPAC. He delivered a fiery response to liberals in the media that are trying to blame his organization for what happened in Florida. LaPierre also challenged them to do more to protect schools and to protect our kids. Here's what he said.
Chris Murphy, Nancy Pelosi, and more, cheered on by the national media, eager to blame the NRA and called for even more government control. They hate the NRA. They hate the Second Amendment. They hate individual freedom. In the rush of calls for more government, they've also revealed their true selves. The elites don't care not one whit about America's school system and school children. It's a bizarre fact that in this country, our jewelry stores all over this country are more important than our children. Our banks, our airports, our NBA games, our NFL games, our office buildings, our movie stars, our politicians, they're all more protected than our children at school. Does that make any sense to anybody?
Now, Wayne LaPierre, right? Good points. He also pointed out how the NRA has actually led the effort in many ways to keep guns out of the hands of criminals and from people that shouldn't have these weapons. But of course, if you're watching, well, the corrupt media in this country, listening to Democrats in Washington, they'll never tell you that because they're only interested in demonizing, attacking the NRA, the Second Amendment supporters. It is all predictable and it is all pathetic. For example, all you have to do is look at what's happened during fake news, CNN's gun control, quote, town hall last night. Facts, differing opinions didn't matter. CNN stacked the deck against Second Amendment supporters. Just take a look. Dana Loesch will join us in a minute at how she was treated last night.
Let me answer the question. You can shout me down when I'm finished, but let me answer Emma's question. They spoke about that before the president made a move, and they spoke about that before Attorney General Jeff Sessions made an announcement about that, too. So that answers your question with that.
Just interject for a second, though, and I understand you're standing up for the NRA, and I understand that's what you're supposed to do. But you just told this group of people that you are standing up for them. You're not standing up for them until you say, I want less weapons.
We had 3 lawmakers on this stage, and only one of them hinted at reinforcing the background check system. It is only as good as the record submitted to it. Only one of them even got anywhere close to mentioning that. We have to have more than 38 states submit records. That's number one. Number 2, we have to develop better protocol to follow up on red flags.
Now, Dana will be here in just a second. And also, you heard people actually saying, burn her. Wow. Now think about that. How can anybody have a serious conversation when one side is literally calling the other side murderers and screaming that they need to be burned? Now, fake news, CNN, they're not interested in solutions. This was all about creating political theater. As a matter of fact, it did nothing to solve the problem. Now, fake news, CNN also has another very serious problem on their hands, Cotton Hay. He's a Stoneman Douglas High School student, and he actually saved lives during this shooting. And he's reporting that CNN actually tried to script his questions at last night's town hall that he didn't end up participating in because he wasn't going to be a part of that farce. Here's what that student told our own Tucker Carlson earlier tonight.
I just want to make sure I have this straight. So you sent them a long, in effect, essay on what you thought, but they put their own words in the question, and they weren't the same as the words you had said in. They were the producer's words?
Absolutely. They had taken what I had wrote and what I had briefed on and talked about, and they actually wrote the question for me.
But not with your words. I mean, they put their own words into your question, even after they'd asked you to send questions in. But that seems dishonest.
It definitely did, and that's kind of why I didn't go last night. Originally, I had thought that it was going to be more of my own question and my own say, and then it turned out to be more of just a script. And she had actually said that over the phone that I needed to stick to the script.
So the student saying that fake news scripted his questions. And what do you call them? Oh, okay. And they're saying they'd never provide script questions and that Colton's father withdrew his name from participating before the show began. But this is not the first time that the fake news network has been accused of scripting questions. Michelle Malkin put out a great article back in January of 2016 for the New York Post. Here's the headline: CNN's long history of allowing Democratic town hall plants. And here are just a couple of the many examples she found. 2007, CNN YouTube debate of quoted undecided voters literally included a member of the LGBT Americans for Hillary Clinton steering committee, a John Edwards supporter that asked questions about abortion, a log cabin Republican that was really backing Barack Obama, a concerned mother that was a union activist for United Steelworkers that had endorsed John Edwards, and a former intern for Democratic Congresswoman Jane Harman. And we know that the former DNC chair, former CNN contributor Donna Brazile, leaked town hall questions to the Clinton campaign. So they had an advantage over Bernie Sanders in that case.